Hi everyone, my name is Rishad. Today is the 11th of January 2026, and today I'll be going over my weekly prediction for Tesla. As usual, I'll be going over the monthly, weekly, and finally the daily charts, and then I'll switch over to the Excel sheet where we can review this week's prediction in more detail and even go over the last one. But before getting into this video, it's important to make the disclaimer that all information here is completely educational, and therefore it is important to conduct your own analysis, whatever analysis that may be, to ensure that you're comfortable with the risk, reward, and trading style, since you may not be with mine. So with that out of the way, let's get into the video. Now, on the monthly charts, we can see Tesla's been on long-term, broadly speaking, on an uptrend. However, there have been a few interesting things here. So we see that there had been a sort of upwards wedge pattern here that broke down. So this is typically what happens. You see that when we had this downward wedge pattern, it broke up, and similarly here as well. We were there for all of those. So we see that this has happened, and the price is moving as expected. However, what's interesting is this trend line I had drawn here, and I had extended it forward. We see that price had come down and rebounded back up. So we have sort of an interesting pullback here, and that's what we're seeing on the monthly chart. So we are seeing sort of a comeback here on the monthly chart. So let's move to the weekly so we can see this in a little more detail. We see that this was that upwards wedge, and it fell down heavily. However, we see that this last candle is a spinning top sort of candle, and that signals market indecision. So the market itself isn't clear as to where it wants to go, and so we need to wait. We need to wait and see why. But what's interesting is this lower wick, why it's so large, and when we get to the daily charts, I'll explain why that's pertinent. But it's interesting that even in an indecisive candle, this lower wick is super long, which means that there may be some sort of a bullish tilt, even though it's generally speaking indecisive. We see that the MACD has just turned negative. However, this is a slightly lagging, it is an indicator, so it may just be as a reaction to these big price movements here. So yeah, that's in the weekly charts. Daily is where it gets interesting. So we see we had this massive drawdown here, even this bearish engulfing pattern, which didn't it panned out for a few days. However, we see that this price action fully went back up, and now we crossed over a resistance point. And we broke upwards. So naturally, if this price does cross the high of this candle, we have a confirmation that it's a continued bullish movement. It's not just a whipsaw. However, if this price does break back down, then we have sort of a whipsaw, and we have to take a negative trade, which both are likely. It's not, and this is sort of coming from, if I go back to the weekly charts here. In the last video, I pointed out that this was a dark cloud cover candlestick pattern. This is a very strong indicator of a bearish reversal, and that's exactly what happened. This is textbook. Here, on the other hand, we see a sort of not necessarily a piercing line, but this is a good bullish candle. It is essentially what it is. There's not really a pattern for it. If this candle wasn't here, maybe you could call it sort of a morning star pattern, but it isn't. We see that the RSI has been going down, so confirming this, and the MACD is negative as well. But again, this cross of the resistance here is a very good signal, a bullish signal. For Tesla, we will buy if it crosses 449.05 and sell if it falls below 437.4 with a target of 2%, a trailing stop loss of 1%. If neither the target or stop loss are hit, then we close on Friday. Currently, the weekly trend, I would classify it as neutral, whereas the monthly trend is bullish, and it's not really confirmed to be a bearish trend yet, so bullish. And yeah, that's all for this video. Thank you for watching. Enjoy, and I'll see you in the next one.